Ugh, why did we choose to visit DC on the snowiest day of the year? My ears are about to freeze off. Lucky. Dear Tim and Moby, can you tell us about our 44th President, Barack Obama? From Zach. Sure, Zach. Barack Hussein Obama was elected president in 2008. It is a unique name, and it reflects his remarkable background. Obama was born in Hawaii in 1961. His mom was from Kansas, and his dad came from a small village in the East African nation of Kenya. They divorced when he was 2. His father moved back to Kenya, while his mom's career often took her overseas. So, for much of his youth, Barack lived with his grandparents in Hawaii. He went to college in New York City, where he became interested in improving the lives of the poor and powerless. So when he graduated, he moved to Chicago and became a community organizer. That's someone who helps people join together to improve their lives and neighborhoods. In the late 1980s, Obama worked with the residents of a housing project on Chicago's tough South Side. He was making a real difference, but he realized he could do even more if he became a lawyer. He enrolled at Harvard and graduated near the top of his class. After law school, Obama moved back to Chicago, where he married a young attorney named Michelle Robinson. The two eventually had 2 daughters, Malia and Sasha. Obama entered politics in 1996 when he was elected to the Illinois State Senate. Then, in 2004, he won a seat in the United States Senate. That summer, he gave a memorable speech at the Democratic National Convention in Boston. At the time, political and cultural differences seemed to be tearing the country apart. Obama argued that the values shared by all Americans were far stronger than those divisions. All of a sudden, he was a national figure. Just 4 years later, he won the Democratic Party's nomination for president. Obama campaigned on making government more responsive to the poor and middle class. He promised to end the war in Iraq, reduce taxes for working families, and provide health care to all Americans. He won in a landslide, becoming the nation's first African-American president. It was a defining moment in America's progress toward racial equality. Even among political opponents, many found cause to celebrate Obama's election. But there was hardly time for him to savor the victory. A financial panic earlier in the year had set off a worldwide recession or economic slowdown. Experts warned of a new Great Depression as jobless rates soared and banks collapsed. In response, Obama raised the minimum wage and pushed an economic relief plan through Congress. The plan, commonly called the stimulus, cut taxes and pumped hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy. And when America's largest car makers were facing bankruptcy, Obama supported them with government money. While these programs were expensive, most economists agree that doing nothing would have cost even more. The economy began to turn around, but the recovery was slow. 4 years after Obama took office, unemployment still hovered around 8%. Yep, in spite of this, Obama was still able to address some of his biggest campaign promises. Millions of Americans couldn't afford health insurance, forcing them to go without basic medical care. Obama's solution was the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. By 2014, it had extended health insurance to 9 million people, with many more scheduled to sign up. Obama also made good on his promise to lift the military's ban on gay service members. In terms of foreign policy, Obama sought to improve America's image, especially in the Middle East. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the U.S. had begun 2 wars in the region, which were still raging. Distrust between the West and the Muslim world was at an all-time high. In a major speech delivered in Egypt, Obama called for a renewed focus on diplomacy. Although critics accused him of apologizing for America, his efforts won him the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize. 2 years later, he ended the war in Iraq and began pulling troops out of Afghanistan. He also lent military support to democratic revolutions in Egypt and Libya. Meanwhile, he kept the terrorist group Al-Qaeda on the run. More than a decade after the 9/11 attacks, Osama bin Laden was killed by American special forces. Well, even supporters have been disappointed in some parts of Obama's record. During the 2008 campaign, he sharply criticized President Bush's anti-terrorism policies as attacks on civil liberties. But Obama has continued many of Bush's most controversial practices, including the use of drones or unmanned aircraft to kill suspected terrorists. And in 2010, he claimed the right to use such deadly force even when the suspect is an American citizen. Back home, Obama had to deal with fierce opposition to the Affordable Care Act. Critics said Obamacare gave the government too much power, and they launched lawsuits against it. Although the Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional, certain provisions did get struck down. Despite these issues, support was still strong for President Obama in 2012, and he went on to win re-election. For his second term, he's promised to focus on some long-standing problems, from immigration to gun violence. Anyway, now I'm freezing and thirsty. Think we can go get some hot chocolate? Gee, thanks.